lonely
I
anymore.
just
That's
not make
great.
you feel lonely there. So this is the first of our Dark Sky our Heritage Week events, first Dark Sky event. And the reason we are having this as Dark Sky Ireland is we are funded by the Heritage Council to produce a community fund project. And as such, this is one of several events that we're hosting during the week. So I think rather than we will let people in as time goes on, that's fine. So I think what we'll do is kick off. So I'd like to, firstly, I'm Georgia Macmillan and I'm the Mayo Dark Sky Park Development Officer and also a member of the Dark Sky Ireland Committee. And I'm delighted to introduce this evening Brendan Owens, who is a very good friend to the Dark Sky community in general and to the Mayo group especially. So Brendan is the public engagement manager for the Institute of Physics. He's also astronomer emeritus from the Royal Greenwich Observatory. And he's going to be presenting for us tonight a brief talk really about citizen science and the sky watching that you can do at any time that you've got a good conditions and good night sky. So what we would like you to do, please, is to enter any data that you collect as a result of this workshop, and Brendan will be telling you how to do that. So I will drop off now my camera and I will introduce you to Brendan. Welcome, Brendan, and thank you for joining us, and looking forward to this. And welcome, folks.
Great. Thanks so much, Georgia, and thanks everyone for coming along. So as Georgia was saying, I kind of have had a bit of time over in Mayo and actually seeing the beautiful dark skies that are over there. I'm primarily based in Dublin, so it's quite the contrast. And it's absolutely fantastic skies over there, especially out on some of the islands as well, having a look around and around Neffin, the park. It's just incredible. So I'm kind of jealous not to be there right now. But what I would say is my heart goes out to people who aren't in maybe the best of sky conditions, that don't think that this isn't for you either. In fact, it's probably incredibly important because we're kind of getting a sense of the star counts that we can get in different lighting conditions. So sometimes you don't have to go very far away from city lights to get a reasonably good view of the night sky, but it can be incredibly impressive how many stars people can count when they get to truly dark skies. So the great thing about this activity is that it's just the wonder and awesomeness of looking up into the night sky and having an excuse to do it, but also providing some data to Dark Sky Ireland, and also we'll mention a little bit for Blackrock Castle Observatory as well. So one thing I'll say as well to kick off is that you don't need any specialist equipment to take part in this sort of activity. In fact, kind of would advise against it, because having something like binoculars for the idea of star counting is you're giving your eyes an artificial boost. So we're looking for you to have a look at the night sky just with your eyes for your locations and making those star counts. And also, as well as stars, we're talking about meteors or shooting stars, because tonight is the peak of a meteor shower called the Perseids Meteor Shower. So we're asking for some meteor counts as well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance on where to look in the sky using a program called Stellarium, and I'll pop it up on the screen in a moment. And I'll also talk about what meteors are as well, or what shooting stars are. It might be a surprise, it might be common knowledge, but hopefully there's something interesting for you to find out there. And then also finish up as well by telling you a little bit about satellites as well, just what to look out for in the sky and how to differentiate these various different lights. So I'll kick off and I'll share my screen here. So hopefully you're getting a view of a sunset sky looking off towards the west-northwest at the moment, and there's quite a beautiful landscape here because this is actually I've set the location for Ballycroy and looking around Neffin Wild Park and the reserve, which is quite beautiful. So actually, Georgia maybe can remind us later on who took this photograph again, because it's just, I want to give credit where credit is due, because this is stunning. And this is something you can do where you can add in your own photography and localize this program. And just, it's probably handy, we can put it up maybe in the chat later, but this is the program we're using, Stellarium. And so you can download it for free on any computer, and there's also a mobile app version as well. What we're doing is actually, this is set up for this evening sky, and I'm fast forwarding through time, just watching the sunset, much quicker than in real life. It's the joy of this program, I can speed things up. And then we're coming to a dark sky, bright stars appear. Some of them that are brightest in the sky have some labels. But if you're getting started, this is a bit of a minefield. You're just looking up at this mass of stars and it's where to begin. But what we do is we join the dots with the stars and look for particular stories in the sky. They've been mostly passed down to Greek and Roman times. Various different cultures across the world have joined the stars in different ways together. But I maybe start with an old favourite to look out for in the sky. If you're trying to get yourself orientated, I would look out for a saucepan shape in the sky. So after the sun sets, have a look around the sky. Look out for this saucepan shape made up of 7 bright stars in the sky, sometimes known as the Big Dipper or the Plough. And you can use this pattern in the sky, and I'll just join the dots together for you, to go looking for other stars. So just a good starting point to start off with. So if you don't have a compass on you, or you weren't too sure where the sun had set, exactly which direction in the sky, you can use this pattern to find your way. Navigators of old would have used it on the sea as well. And we use these 2 stars called Duvet and Merak, and we call them pointer stars. They sort of point out of the saucepan up towards the next brightest star in the sky. So if we follow the line up, imagine drawing an imaginary line from those 2, we'd come to this star in the sky called Polaris, or the North Star. And the brilliant thing about this star is that as the Earth spins, as it's always doing, it appears in roughly the same part of the sky over the entire night. So you can always rely on it to find north. So if we come down to the horizon, I'm cheating here, I've got a big red letter N for north, but that's just showing us that we can find north in the sky. But the pattern we're actually going to look for to help us find out where to go looking for a star count. So our star count in the form that Georgia has put together is around the constellation of Perseus. So we'll have to look for the constellation of Perseus. And then that's also where the meteor shower appears to come from as well. And in a little moment, I'll show some animations, or actually some GIFs, if you like. They're looped photography, just to show you what these sort of shooting stars, what you should expect. Do drop in the chat, by the way, if you've seen shooting stars before, or more specifically, if you've seen any shooting stars maybe over the past couple of nights. I'd love to hear. Just throw in maybe your location and just let us know if you've seen any. In Dublin here, it's a struggle for me, but I think a lot of you might be in a better location. So to have a look for Perseus, I'm going to point you in the direction of something that to me looks like the number 3 in the sky, or W, depending on the way you look at it. So we're kind of going, once you've found the Plough and the North Star, we keep going towards the right in the sky. We've got this pattern, so I'll put it up. The name of it is Cassiopeia. Looks like the number 3, as if you've etched it in a tree stump or something like that, or a tree trunk. And just below that is where you will find Perseus. Now, in today's sort of more instructional talk that I'm doing here, I'm not going to go in too much into the mythology, but it is always nice to reference that the ones we use in astronomical communities these days are Greek and Roman legends. So Cassiopeia is known as the Queen of Ethiopia, and Perseus is often depicted as holding the head of Medusa, who could turn people to stone. But in more basic terms, in a pattern, I like to call this the wonky wishbone in the sky. So if anybody's fond of poultry, then that's what I think of every time. I just have food on the brain a lot, but I do think of it as being a wishbone shape. So you have a small short line and then these 2 protruding lines here. So this is where the Perseids Meteor Shower appears to come from. So we call it the radiant. And that means that you would see shooting stars apparently coming, if you trace back all their paths of streaks in the sky, it would look like they're coming from roughly this part of the sky that's labelled with this new label I've just put up. But that doesn't mean that you should concentrate your efforts for looking for the meteor shower just in this particular part of the sky. In fact, if you're looking to the left or to the right, you're probably going to get a better chance of seeing a streak last for longer. So while I have the Perseids up here, just a little bit of 101 about meteors. Meteors are, we sometimes call them shooting stars. They're in fact nothing got to do with stars. So don't be alarmed, it's not the end of the world. Particularly if you see a very bright one, they can even have almost like a smoky trail on them as well. They can be incredibly bright enough for me to see here even in central Dublin. I remember last year at the same time of year, I was walking over a bridge in Phibsborough, looked up, great big shooting star. No problem with the light pollution. But if you are in somewhere that's truly dark skies, you'll see a lot of the fainter meteors. They are usually about the size of a grain of sand or a grain of rice. They're very, very small objects, and they're dust and debris, in this case coming from a comet called Swift-Tuttle. And it takes a 133-year journey in and out of our solar system, from the outer reaches of our solar system. And it's sort of a litter bug. So it's leaving behind a debris trail. And every now and again, you might notice in this program, Stellarium, a little streak goes by. I've got shooting stars activated, so meteors kind of come by. So if you see that, that's what's going on. And so every year, at this time of year, the Earth is ploughing through that debris trail from the comet Swift-Tuttle. So I like to think of it as, maybe it's not a glamorous analogy, but like bugs splattered on the windscreen as you're driving the car. So that's basically the whole Earth, like one big car, one big windscreen being the atmosphere, and these little tiny dust particles and slamming into the atmosphere. And actually what they're doing is heating up the air around the little dust debris and causing gases to glow in the atmosphere as well. So you get these bright glimpses. So that's what you're seeing. Gives the impression of something a lot bigger and a lot more cataclysmic going on. So I guess put your mind at ease. It's not the end of the world if you see a lot of these very bright ones at any time. And looking for meteors is a group activity. So I would say that, as I said before, would not use binoculars or a telescope. You want to see as much of the sky as possible. Try and get out if you're somewhere dark. Let your eyes dark adapt for about 20 minutes at least. Try not to use your phone, because then you've reversed all that hard work that you've done. And have as many of you looking in different parts of the sky at once. You also get the experience of everybody going, I've seen one, did you see that one? Did you catch it? And kind of like, it's just really fun to do. So you're looking in this count for meteors to count as many as you can across an hour. I'll go through that in a moment in the form. And, your success may vary. And there is one very big factor this year. I'm just going to move around to another part of the sky. You can see over here in the east, this year the moon is not playing ball for us. It is rising, and the moon is unfortunately a form of light pollution for us when we're trying to see the stars and meteors. Now, the peak of the meteor shower is tonight, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have been looking the previous couple of nights and also for a few nights later. So if you look up the moonrise and moonset times, you can kind of try and avoid the moon as much as possible, because right now it is pretty much a full moon, so it is very bright in the sky. And even if you get a chance, even if the moon is up at the moment, is trying not to look in the direction of the moon in the sky. Try and give your eyes a chance again. And for the meteor watch, we recommend waiting until after 11 o'clock. Actually, what I would do every year, and this was when I was in London, is I would actually go before, I would wake up very early in the morning. So I'd wake up pre-dawn, because that's actually your highest success rate for finding meteors in the sky, or seeing the most of them in the sky. So I'm just fast forwarding through time, and as you see, before we hit sunrise, Perseus is up quite high in the sky. So if you imagine these lines coming out from that region of the sky, you're giving yourself more opportunities to see streaks of shooting stars all across the sky. So that's a little bit about the meteors themselves. I also just want to say about Perseus. I'm going to show a picture of it in a little presentation in a moment. But it isn't maybe the most recognizable pattern in the sky, especially if you are in a light polluted area. So I would always, again, just emphasize that number 3 that you're seeing up here is probably your best way of locating Perseus in the sky, because it can be mistaken. The other thing that you have on your side is a bright star called Capella. So if you see the number 3 and you see a bright star below it, in between the two is where you have the constellation of Perseus. So that's a rough guide for you there as well. And I've still got the sky set here to Ballycroy, and I'd just like to take you to a few random locations as an idea of how light pollution can affect our view. So in Stellarium, it automatically can give you an idea of how light polluted the sky is. It will adjust the sky and give us a sense of how many stars we're losing because of light pollution. So I know it's a bit random. Dundalk I'm not from Dundalk, but I go to Dundalk a lot. So just as an example of a large town, start to notice maybe that we've lost quite a few of the stars. When I zoom out, it actually becomes trickier and trickier. You can still just about make out the number 3, so you've got a good chance of seeing the brightest stars in Perseus and some of the brighter meteors. But if I take it to the extreme and go for where I am right now, suddenly it looks like a lot more of the sky is washed out. Now I zoom in, it is a little bit more forgiving, but it starts to become very tricky. You've maybe come up with only 2 of the stars, the main stars in Perseus, which are Merfak and Algol. You can still, however, just about make out the number 3, maybe not the whole thing. And if you can avert your eyes from streetlights in Dublin, you can just about make out the whole thing. So I'd say it's still worth it if you're in a light polluted town. So thinking Castlebar, thinking Westport. This is part of the interesting thing of gathering this data and the citizen science of being able to map how dark our skies are and how much light pollution is affecting our star count. When it comes, I'm going to quickly go back to beautiful Ballycroy again and beautiful dark skies. Just if you're wondering and you're counting and thinking maybe what's a good star count, usually for a star count we might use the constellation of Orion. So for Perseus it's quite similar. I would say if you're getting 25 or 30 stars that you're seeing, that's really good in that constellation. So you don't have to see every single one. When I zoom in here, you can see many more just appear. So there's a limit with your own eyesight as well as the light pollution factor as well. So, but I don't want please do give honest answers as well. It'd be great if we saw 30 everywhere, but the idea is being like, be honest with yourself. If you can't see as many, don't worry about that. And if you've got a couple of friends that you're around with that can maybe average the score before you enter it in the form, that might be a nice way of doing it as well for the same location. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave this behind just so I show you a little bit more, because I realize I'm showing you an animation and maybe it might be easier to see some video footage of what we mean by meteors and a little reminder about Perseus as well. So hopefully seeing this screen now, just a little switch. So often we look up star maps of Perseus, it looks a lot more complicated than what I've shown before. But I'd like to show again, just to emphasize, I do worry a little bit on this when I show Stellarium, maybe the contrast on your screens, it might not be as good. So just again, just that pattern, I've got it here in black and white. So this is again, just the shape that you're looking for, this wonky wishbone in the sky. And I've just highlighted the brightest stars. Now, when it comes to identifying things in the sky, meteors are something that's, they're moving, but they're very brief. The other object we were talking about in our form is our satellites as well. And there's a few red herrings for satellites. So airplanes for one. You can also see maybe boat masts, lots of different things like that. So I find this is really nice. Blackrock Castle Observatory have sort of highlighted this from the League of Lost Causes website. And it's a nice little flowchart looking through what are you actually seeing in the sky. We used to get lots of calls in the Royal Observatory Greenwich saying, I've seen a bright light in the sky last night. What was it? And then you have to ask a few questions about maybe the basic things of, are your retinas burning? That's a bad sign if it's the sun. Is it moving? Takes it in a different category. Sorry. So you've got options of so quick that it moved very, very quickly in the sky. And is it super bright? Is it a meteor? If it's twinkling, it's kind of fuzzy. Maybe, and then you have to ask, is it attached to a boat? Then you kind of go, okay, it's a planet. But one of the more interesting ones is when we follow the path of, is it really big? A big light in the sky? Is it moving? So quickly you almost missed it. Is anything blinking? No. And then I know it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Are any astronauts waving at you? Which is not something we're expecting someone to see. And if the answer is yes, it's the International Space Station. And the answer is no, it's an artificial satellite. So when it comes to counting satellites in the sky, you might wonder, what does that look like? So I'll show you a little animation in a moment. But just on meteors again, for those who maybe haven't seen them recently, here's just a little grouping of meteors from Perseids Meteor Shower over the years. And you can see what you're looking for. Now, some of them are particularly bright as well. You might notice some of them leave behind a trail. So you can catch it. It's more than a blink of an eye when you're seeing these. For a satellite, you're not seeing something streak across the sky. You're seeing what looks very, very star-like or planet-like, a bright point taking its time going across the sky. And sometimes it can be partially obscured by cloud cover and then comes out again. But it's a very consistent path across the sky. If it's very bright, it's definitely worth checking a website like NASA Spot the Station or heavensabove.com to check if it's the International Space Station, if it's due to pass over your area. And that won't be a satellite. What that will be is the International Space Station. So some people have actually taken fantastic footage of the International Space Station from the ground using some very expensive equipment, telescopes and tracking hardware and software. But this is incredible. So technically can be called an artificial satellite, but this artificial satellite is large enough. It's an American football field-sized artificial satellite housing 6 to 9 astronauts on board at any one time. So you may be seeing the International Space Station rather than a communication satellite. So just some top tips before I kind of just very briefly mention the ins and outs of the form. Some of these might be a little obvious, but I can't say it enough. You find yourself, maybe, I even do it myself, I slip up, I go outside and I think, if only I'd looked up, just a reminder again of exactly where I'm looking, and I look at my phone and I've destroyed my night vision. So do practice the idea of star hopping before you go into the dark. So the idea of looking for the plough, finding where north is, looking for the number 3 in the sky, and looking below to find Perseus, just to remind yourself of the routine. Then outside, give your eyes 20 minutes to dark adapt. Can't say that enough. It just, it's amazing. It's also the wonder of it as well, just letting your eyes see more and more if light pollution is not a very large issue for you. And then meteor watching and counting is definitely done best as a group activity. So definitely have a look around the whole sky. You can't cover it all. We say in an ideal condition, and with absolutely pristine skies and pristine eyesight, you could see on the best of years 150 shooting stars in an hour for the Perseids Meteor Shower. Now, practically it doesn't turn out like that. And that means you'd have to have one giant eye that is absolutely perfect vision and is looking at the entire sky all at once. So this is again why it's good to have a group activity. So the Perseids Meteor Shower does fluctuate. If you imagine this comet is coming in every 133 years and it's left behind a debris trail, it's not going to be somebody, some cosmic being throwing out, pieces of dust one at a time. It's going to be very, very random. So sometimes we can have good years, sometimes we can have not so good years. And then if you do have to use your phone, there are sometimes red light modes apps as well that you can use, and I know it can be hard. I would say avoid the moon. So for the Perseids Meteor Shower, we've got a few days more. You can wait, maybe pick a better time when the moon is at least very low in the sky and maybe obscured by buildings or trees. And at the worst case scenario, don't look in the direction of the moon. So you give your eyes a chance. So if you've got your back to the moon, that would be brilliant. So there, I had lots of other tips, but I thought if I get more than 5, they might not be easy to remember. So, Georgia, I think you might have the link already in. I just wanted to double check with you if that's there for folks to see.
Just popped it in the chat box again there, Brendan.
That's great. That's brilliant. So this might be handy, and for those who are watching this back as well, if you want to just scan the code off the screen, you can. You can always pause. And then just very quickly to run through this, and then maybe have a few minutes for any questions if anybody has them. I haven't had a chance to look at the chat yet, so I might ask for George's help fielding some questions or comments would be fantastic. So they're asking you for which county you're living in, whereabouts you took your observation, date and time being very important, asking did you join this very webinar, a little reminder, which is very handy reference guide again. So you've got the number 3 in the sky for Cassiopeia, and below that where both the constellation for the star count is and also where the meteors appear to be coming from, the radiant. So in terms of the meteor watch, we're asking you how many meteors you saw and describing how bright they were. For counting, we're asking for how many of the stars you can trace in the night sky by following those imaginary constellation lines, trying to make that wishbone in the sky. And finally, for satellites, did you see any? And could you describe what you saw? So how many, were they traveling from east to west, west to east? Were they incredibly bright? Was it quite faint? And the time of night. So as much detail there as you could give. And then this is quite interesting because there are, technical ways of mapping the light pollution for areas, but it's very interesting to know your assumption on whether you feel that your night sky observations were heavily light polluted or that you were in a very dark sky. Just, I think, Georgia can maybe correct me on this one, but I think it's very much your gut instinct of what you're thinking for your observation that night. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I didn't want to take too long going through a form that you can go through in your own time, but please fire away questions, comments, insights. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you, Brendan. I'm going to just let everyone's camera, so I might make it like take the spotlight off you so you're not under pressure there. And then if anyone would like to ask a question, there's not, other than, let me just have a look in the chat. Charles Smith is letting us know that there's much more cloud than last night. Yeah, I do think tonight in Mayo, certainly we will lose some of the visibility we've had over the last few nights. So that's one of those things. Of course, if you do still see it, just note the cloud conditions, Charles. That's really what we're asking. So if you do go out and you can still see something, that would be great. We had Terry just reminding us to keep Perseus high in the sky. So when you're doing your star count, so at least 50 degrees up. Thank you for that, Terry. And we have Fiona saying sometimes satellites are traveling north and south and sometimes east-west. What's the significance to that? So there's a question for you, Brendan.
That's a good question. I might actually not be as au fait with this. Basically, we have, a number of different orbits for satellites. There's kind of quite, I'd say they're like traffic lanes for satellites in various different orbits and heights. So it depends on what sort of their function is and where they're going around. So it's not necessarily that it's a satellite gone wonky, I guess. It's just the sort of paths that are set up and the allocated orbits for those particular satellites. We do usually have the categories we have are satellites which are quite low Earth orbit satellites. They're a couple of 100 kilometers high, and then you have communication satellites, or we have geostationary ones that are far enough away to kind of sync with a part of the Earth and stay there. So the ones that you'll be seeing are low Earth orbiting satellites. But yeah, sorry, I don't have more information on the significance of the direction of travel.
That's great. Thanks, Brendan. I don't think we have any questions per se. We had a couple of observations mentioned. I think it was Charles that had seen in Kilmena 3 Perseids 10:55 p.m. to 11:20 last night with a very long trail. And I know a good few of us were out in Mulranny a couple of nights ago with the Newport Astronomy Club, and we saw, I saw probably 8 or 9, I'm sure others saw more than that over the time, but we did see a lot of satellites though. I think we counted about 18 when I left, so we have a lot of filling out to do on the form. So can I ask if anyone would like to ask Brendan a question? You can use your mic, so it's quite an informal group this evening, so don't be shy if you'd like to throw out a question or even a comment on some of the observations that you plan to do.
Thank you.
Do we have somebody on mic there?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think we just have somebody who's not muted. That's okay. Well, look, Brendan, I think I leave it there if nobody has any questions. And what we'd really ask you to do, though, is do get outside, even if it isn't that clear. Get outside and enjoy going out after dark. It's something that people don't have the opportunity to do, especially in dark sky places. So we would encourage you to look up. You have a few tips now. We hope that was helpful for spotting the last years during a dark count.
I think Richard just has his hand up.
Sorry, Richard, I didn't see that. Fire away, Richard. I know. Take your
Hi,
own.
can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, tell me, when you're doing a star count, do you count stars only by direct vision or do you include averted vision stars as well?
I would go for direct vision. So what you're looking for directly. So you know, hopefully in it, it's not like in the sense of looking for say Andromeda Galaxy or something like that using averted vision. I would just go for your direct vision. Yeah,
Right, thanks.
Yeah, Richard, we're
good
trying to.
question though.
Yeah, it is a good question. We're trying to keep this very, I suppose, inclusive for people. So if we get into averted vision, I suppose that would be something that a lot of astronomers would know about, but not necessarily the general public who are perhaps engaging for the first time in night sky viewing. So just what you can see directly would be wonderful for us to record that data. And what we will do is pop this up on our YouTube channel if anyone wants to watch it back again. And the form, as Brendan has helpfully put the QR code up so people can access our form. And it does also link in with Blackrock Castle Observatory, as Brendan was pointing out there. They're conducting a pilot study on satellites. So it is really useful data that we need to collect. It's really helpful for us. And we hope it gets people out a bit more.
Yeah, I think I described it to you, Georgia, that it's kind of like going fishing sometimes. Like it's an activity you might not make a catch, but like the act of kind of doing it is kind of half the fun as well. I kind of have to pull myself away from, especially when it's Dublin skies, because just for that little chance that I'll get a fireball, so in a particular bright meteor, but it's quite addictive. But if you're in anywhere with lesser light pollution, it's definitely worth looking at. I'm just to emphasize again, in previous years when I used to be in London, I'd be in southeast London. I would get up at around about 4 a.m. or so and look out. And in 15 minutes, I would get a handful of meteors that I could see, which, for light polluted areas surprised me at the time. Yeah, really enjoyed doing that. Just because the Earth's turning sort of into the stream of the meteors. So after midnight is best, and the closer you can get to sunrise without the sky getting that sort of midnight blue light.
After midnight.
Yeah, so it's maybe stock up on maybe not too much coffee, maybe hot cocoa or something like that. But that's what I'd recommend is the later the better. And Charles.
Hello there. Thanks for your talk. It was great. A kind of quick one. Sometimes you see colours in the sky, in the stars. I know planets. Are you interested in that kind of observation?
Not in particular that it will count to this, but one thing that I always find really interesting, and haven't checked at what stage it is that one of the stars in Perseus is called Algol, and it's often known as the demon star because it changes in brightness. It's actually it's a triple star system, but there's mainly two main stars. There's one star that kind of is dimmer and is partially eclipsing the other star, so it does have periods of dimming and brightening, which is really interesting. Yeah, but not in this form. But I think that's always just very interesting in itself, the color variation or brightness variation.
Okay, thanks very much, man.
Thanks, Charles. And by the way, your audio is awesome. I'm just getting really good. You've got a great microphone there. And Terry's just asking as well, wanted to count sporadic meteors separately to the Perseids. So that's a good point. I'm actually not too sure, Georgia, if you would like the sporadic ones as well as the ones specifically that are from the radiant.
I think, if you're out and you see them, I mean, we will close this off later. Well, we'll probably leave it open until early September. So there could be, I suppose, any shooting stars, meteors at that stage. So I think, just count what you see, even if it isn't specifically Perseid.
Awesome.
And just make a few notes. The form is quite open-ended, so people can interpret what they see, and that's it. We're really trying to get engagement and just to get people out, so we know people are out looking up. That's the main thing. Okay, well, look, we might leave it there. I have to say a big thank you again to Brendan, because he always puts so much effort into these talks for us, so I really appreciate that. It was very informative, and we look forward to having you back again soon, Brendan.
Oh, I can't wait to be under dark skies again. Thank you.
So thank you, folks, for joining us. Just to plug Heritage Week again, if you look heritageweek.ie, there's a number of events, not just Dark Skies, on that website that you can join either remotely or in person if you can. Just from Dark Sky Ireland's point of view, we have more events this week. Even tonight in Mayo, we are doing a Dark Sky walk. It won't be terribly dark, so we're starting at 9:30, but we will just be enjoying the night sky, whatever we see, even if that's a few clouds along the way. Monday night we have, we'd encourage you to join us then. We have the International Dark Sky Association representatives joining us. So if you have a dark sky and you want to protect it, that is the one to be at. So that's 7 p.m. on Monday. And Wednesday we have Dr. Travis Longcore, who I'm delighted to say is joining us. He has really led the field in researching light pollution for ecology. So we already have something like 150 people signed up for that webinar, which is fantastic. He is really a very informative speaker. So if you can make that one at all, please do, 7 p.m. on Wednesday. So other than that, thank you to you all for joining us. Thanks again to Brendan, and thanks to the Heritage Council for supporting our project. Have a nice evening and enjoy your stargazing.
Thanks, Georgia. Thanks, everyone. Happy stargazing.
See.